Okay, so I've already made a video about Jeremy Corbyn, but I want to add a little bit to that because there's been a report that I've just read, which I think is important to discuss, to raise awareness of. I think, from what I observe, the people who support Jeremy Corbyn um, are very unlikely to be swayed by any other opinion because we're sort of getting around a situation now whereby it's either support Corbyn or you're a right-wing Tory. Um, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a personality cult, but there is, from my perspective, a lack of objectivity from a lot of Jeremy Corbyn supporters. And this is somewhat concerning because his leadership lead looks like it has no sign of abating whatsoever. So there is a very strong chance now that he will become the next Labour leader. The implications of that, of course, are that as leader of Her Majesty's opposition, he would have a shot at becoming Prime Minister. I don't think he will, but the very implication of it is important enough. So anyway, I'm going to talk a bit about this report I've just read, which doesn't surprise me, but frankly, it does anger me a bit. Um, okay, so I'll read this report first, and I want to talk about a few other issues. Um, This is from the Independent, and that's an important point to make. It's not from the Daily Mail, although they have covered it as well. It's not from, the Sun or the Express. This is from the Independent, which is a centre-left newspaper. The headline is Jeremy Corbyn is criticised by victims' families after failing to condemn the IRA. Jeremy Corbyn, I'm going to read out a little bit of this. As usual, I'll put the link. Jeremy Corbyn has been criticised by families of IRA victims after failing to explicitly condemn the group. He was in Northern Ireland yesterday to appear on a panel at a West Belfast festival, Bill on football. Football. I'm afraid my Gaelic isn't up to scratch. In a telephone interview with BBC Radio Ulster, Stephen Nolan repeatedly asked Mr Corbyn to condemn the IRA's actions. When asked if he condemned the IRA, the Islington North MP said, "I condemn all bombing. It is not a good idea and it's terrible what happened." Mr Nolan repeated, "The question is to condemn what the IRA did." Mr Corbyn replied, "Look, I condemn what was done by the British Army as well as all the other sides as well. What happened in Derry in 1972 was pretty devastating as well." When the question was put to him a third time, he said, "Can I answer the question in this way? We gained ceasefires. They were important and a huge step forward. Those ceasefires brought about the peace process, brought about the reconciliation process, which we should all be pleased about. Can we take the thing forward rather than backward?" Mr Nolan asked again, "Are you refusing to condemn what the IRA did?" And then apparently there was a signal problem because Mr Corbyn was on the train. So for a final time, Mr Nolan asked a question. "I feel we have to do," and Corbyn replied, "I feel we will have to do this later, you know." Oh, sorry, I think that was Nolan who said that. But anyway, the point here is repeatedly, just one more bit I'll just add to this. Anne Travers, his 22-year-old sister Mary, was shot dead by the IRA, told the Belfast Telegraph that it was an insult to all our dead loved ones. She said, "I am shocked and disappointed that an MP, especially someone who hopes to win a leadership contest and lead the Labour Party into government, would find it so difficult to say 5 simple words. Yes, I condemn the IRA. Any right-minded moral government minister shouldn't have to think twice about it." There's numerous other victims of the IRA who lost loved ones from the terrorism, um, who are understandably upset about this. Um, Firstly, a few things to say about the general Northern Ireland thing, because inevitably, with my accent, people are going to sort of weigh in and assume that I'm of a certain position. I've always been consistent in any videos about Northern Ireland that bad things happen on both sides, but I have also been consistent in absolutely maintaining that the IRA was a ruthless terrorist organisation that knowingly killed scores, hundreds of civilians, thousands if you include all the injuries as well. So, um, for someone who wants to be leader of a major political party who ultimately wants to be prime minister of this country, I think it is utterly disgraceful that this man cannot bring himself to specifically condemn this organisation. Those generic answers are frankly cowardly. He should just come out outright and say, "I believe what the IRA done was morally justified," if that is his position. Those were cowardly answers, quite frankly. They were not answers befitting someone who wants to be a leader. Um, they were cowardly in the sense that he was skirting around the question. He would not simply say directly, "Yes, I condemn what the IRA done." Making generic statements is very easy to do. Anyone could do that. But it is very reasonable that someone who is aspiring for high political office is asked tough questions. Um, and I just think it's reprehensible. There's nothing wrong with him saying that there was bad things happening on both sides. But the thing about he's talking about Derry 1972, Bloody Sunday, that has been exhausted beyond belief. Everyone knows what happened there. It's been so widely documented that it has overshadowed some far worse atrocities. No, it was a terrible event, okay? And it was wrong what happened. No question about that. But the likes of Jeremy Corbyn, quite frankly, seem to think that is more important than, for example, the 21 people killed in Birmingham, or the 18 people killed in Ballykelly, or the numerous other atrocities attributed to the IRA. Um, I think, frankly, it borders on treasonous. I would go so far as to say that because if this man cannot bring himself to condemn a terrorist organisation that targeted this country, what sort of prime minister do you think he's going to be? Like I said, the problem is his supporters are so brainwashed and so blindly adulated by this man. Are not looking at valid questions that are being asked because they're just sort of reacting like, oh, anyone who criticizes Jeremy Corbyn must be a Tory. Of course, Tories will criticize him, but there's a lot of people out there who are centrist or even centre left, and I put myself into that category. Well, I'm a centrist, but I'm no Tory, and my issue is not so much with his social policies. I've said before, he has some compassionate social policies, great. But social policies, as important as they are not everything. You have to look at foreign policy, you have to look at all sorts of things. Um, and I think that Jeremy Corbyn's supporters sway between being on the hard left to being very naive. Um, I'm not saying that they're all stupid. I'm not saying that, some of these people support him and it's a matter of conviction. Fair enough. We live in a democracy. They have every right to their opinion. But I do think that a lot of people are really not thinking about legitimate questions that are being asked. Um, Say, for example, we have a Prime Minister Corbyn. Ask yourself a question. How would Prime Minister Jeremy Corbyn, respond to a major terrorist attack? Would he make excuses for it? Would he say, "Oh, our foreign policy has led to this," etc., etc.? How would a Prime Minister Corbyn respond to an aggressive Russia? How would a Prime Minister Corbyn respond to a potential other Tiananmen Square incident in China, for example? Um, okay, a lot of this is speculation, but when someone aspires to be leader of a nation, that person has to face tough questions. It's absolutely legitimate. And very often, what Jeremy Corbyn does is lose his temper and, frankly, have a little bit of a rant. Now, of course, there are right wing newspapers out there that are going to smear him. I'm aware of that. They've done it with Ed Miliband. And I have no love lost for the likes of the Daily Mail and the Sun and so on. But this report is from the Independent. That's hardly one of Murdoch's rags. Um, I just feel that people are not looking at, and this isn't just about Northern Ireland and the IRA. This man has a track record of either avoiding or acting as an apologist for terrorist groups. He spoke about Hamas and Hezbollah as our friends. Now, that attracted a lot of controversy, and people said, oh, it was just diplomatic language. I don't accept that. He could have said, we need to invite Hezbollah to talks without saying our friends Hezbollah. You could still be diplomatic without using the word friends. But in politics, and Jeremy Corbyn knows this, in politics, friends is a loaded term. So, people, I'm frustrated that people are being a bit naive around Mr. Corbyn. I get that some people are motivated by their conviction, that's fine. But I think others are just motivated because they hate the Tories so much that they're not looking at the whole picture. Um, I'll give him his due. He's a man who stands by his conviction. He's honest. And I can understand where the respect comes from that. And yes, he does stand out. So I'm not surprised that he's currently leading the race. Um, but I personally believe that a Prime Minister Corbyn would be incredibly reckless for this country. I believe he would be, frankly, reckless for our national security, because I am not convinced that a Prime Minister Corbyn would want a strong United Kingdom. His social policies are about compassion. That's great, and that is part of being a strong country. But you have to wonder about his approach, for example, to the military. Um, he is chair of the Stop the War Coalition. This is an organization that has repeatedly, consistently taken the position that all the world's problems are the fault of Britain and America. All the world's problems. This isn't just a case of someone who's disagreeing with our foreign policy. This is someone who is so blinded by his hatred for this country's foreign policy that it's actually leading him to ignore other important players in the world. In the Stop the War Coalition, that is an organization, for example, that refuses to condemn sectarian bombings in Iraq. So I don't know how, as far as I'm concerned, they're a bunch of hypocrites because they present themselves as pacifists, but their condemnation of violence is selective. And I don't accept that generic sort of statements like, "Oh, we condemn terrorism." That isn't good enough. You have to be specific. If you've been asked a specific question, you have to give a specific answer. And he was asked 5 times specifically. Okay, the fourth time he didn't hear. 4 times specifically, do you condemn the IRA's actions? It's a simple question. He either had to say, no, I believe they were justified, or yes, I condemn them. Not a woolly answer about, oh, I condemn all the violence, but the British done this, the British done that. That's already well documented, you know? In the Troubles, approximately 3,500 people were killed. It's been estimated by independent studies that as many as 1,800 were at the hands of the Irish Republican Army. So, when we're talking about proportionality in this, um, yes, Bloody Sunday was an awful event, but I get frustrated how there's so much focus on that that it overshadows many, many atrocities the IRA committed. Now, yes, Northern Ireland's in a better place. Yes, these events were in the past. I understand that. But in the end of the day, this man wants to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And if he cannot bring himself to specifically condemn that, then you have to really ask questions. It's the same with Islamist terrorism. Of course, he'll make a generic statement, oh, I condemn terrorism. But will he specifically recognize, that's important as well, and then condemn Islamist terrorism? So far, I am yet to see Jeremy Corbyn or his organisation do that. So, people need to look at everything. His social policies, I can understand why a lot of people are enthusiastic about him because no question about it, a lot of those policies I would support. I mean, the slandering of unemployed people, workers' rights, etc., etc. I have no problem with those sort of issues, generally speaking. But what I'm concerned about is Jeremy Corbyn's attitude to Britain's place in the world and his attitude to basically defending this country. Um, because the mindset of people like Jeremy Corbyn seems to be all the world's problems are the fault of Britain and America. And I just think that's not befitting of someone who wants to lead this country. Yes, you can reflect on a country's mistakes. Yes, you can even condemn things that we've done wrong, but not at the price of overlooking other important players in the world. Now, I'm aware that people will sort of target this video, and I'm expecting Irish nationalists to come on and get into a big, long-winded debate about the rights and wrongs of the Troubles. So be it. I'm not going to engage in that simply because it's too time-consuming. I've made my position clear. I believe the IRA was a brutal terrorist organization that killed civilians, and frankly, it sickens me that people try to make excuses for them and glorify them. Um, So, I'm going to leave the comment section open if you want to do that. I'm just telling you now, I'm not going to get into a long-winded debate. If you leave a sectarian comment, I'm going to delete it. I won't delete your comment simply for having a different view from me, but anything about Protestants or Catholics or the British or the Irish or anything like that that's explicitly sectarian, I'm not going to permit that on my channel, because that's what I'm really trying to avoid that here. Um, because, I'm not talking about Catholics, I'm talking about the IRA. Secondly, anyone slandering me as a right-wing Tory bastard or something like that, again, I'm going to delete your comment because I consider that as slander against myself. Um, there seems to be this attitude that Jeremy Corbyn is above reproach. That's dangerous. Yes, I know the gutter press is out to get him. I'm well aware of that. But there is also responsible journalists who are asking some very valid questions, and his supporters are trying to shout them down and sort of say, "How dare they ask Jeremy this? Come on, get real. This man wants to be Prime Minister of this country." So these questions are entirely legitimate about his positions on important issues, about his philosophy, about his ideology. It's entirely legitimate. And if he can't face the heat, then frankly, he shouldn't be in this race.